The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a sizable crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord. There's a thing about suffering we must be aware of. God never wills suffering for us. He does not will it. In theology, we make a distinction between God's direct will, active will, willingly chooses things, versus his permissive will. Direct versus permissive. And this is where suffering lies in. God permits suffering in our lives. Because that's a distinction that must be clearly made, because if we don't make that distinction, what happens then next is, God, you're not good. Why? Because enter in all of our suffering, right? Our pain, our cancer, the death of a loved one. And so we can grow resentful and even bitter or angry at God. I mean, how many of us have done that? We all have. But God never directly wills our suffering, but he allows it. Because as we all know, suffering does something. It reveals the truth if we allow it to. And we see this unfolding in the life of this blind man. Look at this blind man. Begging at the streets of Jericho, and within this blind man would have been years and years of suffering. Living on the streets, begging, made fun of, ridiculed. This man endured tremendous suffering. But notice what happens next. He hears our Lord coming, and here from the depths of his suffering, he cries out from the depths, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." Do you see what suffering had just did to him? It cracked open his heart. Without this suffering, this would not have happened. Without this suffering, he would not have ever been open to our Lord. So he cries out, "Jesus," from the depths of his pain and his suffering, "have pity on me." Blindness in the Bible is always a metaphor for spiritual blindness. He wasn't just physically blind, no, but there's a spiritual quality to this. And his suffering breaks it all out. And how we know this? Because look at what happens next to the Lord. He says, "Master, I want to see. Help me." Do you see already his discipleship growing? Because remember what a Christian disciple is. A disciple is someone who must rely on Jesus 100%. This blind man is beginning to rely on our Lord. He says, "Master, I need you." And our Lord says, "Go your way. Your faith has saved you." God permitted suffering of this blind man to lead him to deeper faith. And that's what he's doing with our own suffering now. Whatever suffering you are going through, or you will go through, God is allowing it somehow. But it's to reveal a deeper truth.